What's going on today, B? How you doing today, man?
Good, man. Excited. Looking at some projects and
Exactly.
trying to post a number this quarter.
Okay, okay.
But if we don't get one this quarter, we're certainly going to get one, next quarter.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
Man, that
looking at a lot of deals.
That property that you've been looking at is beautiful. I know we don't really go by the beauty, but
Yeah.
it's quite a gorgeous.
Hard
property,
not to,
right?
to be in this area, in that St. Petersburg area. And when you see a property like this, it's hard not to, the emotional side of you definitely, it's like pulling for this property, So, but then you get slapped with with reality, or doused with a cold, bucket of ice water when it comes to when you put your letter of intent in based on, your standards, and, the seller's like, nah. There's like 3 or 4 people ahead of you that it's a little closer to the whisper price.
Right.
So then you get doused with that cold bucket of reality, ice cold water. Ice cold bucket of reality is always tough to get doused with, but at the end of the day, it's a competitive market.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're gonna talk more about that today, man. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio, brother.
Yes, sir.
And So first of all, we want to welcome you guys to Buy the Block, our podcast, where we teach you how to buy it, rent it, profit. This is episode 19, and today we are going to show you how to show your unit and close the deal. Last week we talked about kind of setting the qualifying criteria, and so now you've set your qualifying criteria, but then you still kind of have to close the deal by showing it.
Absolutely.
I saw somebody share a video in one of our kind of, investor groups. It was this hideous video of kind of him hand walking the unit with his phone. There was no staging in it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So today, man, I wanted to talk to you. This is a portion of your book as well, and I've been able to see you kind of rehab Park Plaza, which you've done a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Tell me more about why showing your unit. Why is that part of closing the deal? Like, why should we be thinking about how we present ourselves when we're showing our units and getting them rent ready?
Well, ideally, so let's start at the beginning.
Right.
In the beginning, there's the genesis of why we do this.
Okay.
The number one reason why I'm doing this, I won't say the number one, but there's several reasons why I do this.
Yeah.
The main reasons are to understand the prospect tenant.
Okay.
Who they are, what they like, what they don't like. Okay.
Yep.
And then understand a base rent for that area.
Right.
Okay. Once I can get that information, then I can begin to really go from there with my assumptions that are either put into the analyzer in the very beginning stages, which then ultimately works their way into the framework of the management plan, which is executed upon day one when we show up to the property.
Right. Okay.
So it's really trying to understand the rent, the base rent. Where are we at currently with the base rent?
Right.
Where can we project to go with our assumptions? Because remember, when you're putting all this information in and you're underwriting, these are all assumptions.
Right.
And then when you own the property, it's still assumptions.
Okay.
Can we push the rents? How far can we push the rents?
Right.
If we push the rents, how long do the units sit vacant? Are we pushing the time frame up because we've pushed the rents?
Okay.
And we're setting the market pace? Are we now our vacant units sitting on the market for several more days? How is that affecting us with loss to lease? So all these things are like going through my mind, and you're having to compile answers,
Right.
To as the asset manager, and then your property managers have to execute on that. So it's really that's what this is when you're talking about why we do this and why staging your units is so important. It's not just, if you're a leasing professional, it's not just staging.
Okay.
It's really understanding how to get to that base rent, and then how to really, not only get to the base rent, but how do you add value? Right. Because people talk and use that term value add
Right.
loosely, but very few people dive into what value add is.
Okay.
So when I'm looking at these projects, I'm looking at how to add value add to the base rent. What can we add in the remodeling of the units.
Right.
What can we add to the curb appeal? All to stack on top of that base rent.
Right.
$25, for light fixture upgrade, $45 for faucet upgrades, fixture upgrades, $75 for a ceiling fan, vanity in the bathroom, $75, whatever it may be. And I'm just throwing numbers out, but you get the idea of how it begins to you stack on from the base, how you continue to put these amenities on that you're adding, and you get to a certain dollar amount.
Right.
Curb appeal, $25. At some point, you're going to say, okay, this is our dollar amount. And then you're going to say, this is what we're going to push to the market. And then you sit and you wait.
Okay.
And you made your assumptions based on your COTA, strategic evaluation of your target area information. But then you really get tested by the market in real life, because guess what? Now you do this on Monday. You post to Facebook Live or Facebook Marketplace. You post to Zillow. Now Zillow charges you, by the way, so $9 a week. I have found with my team that Facebook Marketplace has been a much better lead generator than Zillow. They're kind of neck and neck, but I'm kind of liking Facebook. Number one, it's free, and you're able to look at profiles, and you're able to speak to these prospects a little quicker on the platform with Facebook. So the management staff and individuals like that, a lot easier, or a lot better. But at the end of the day, now you're going to be tested in the marketplace by actual individuals stepping sight on your property, taking a tour. And then they're going to, your assumptions will be tested. So now now it's time for staff to ask, what did you think about our fixture upgrades? Right. Would you pay extra dollars for this ceiling fan? And now you're actually getting feedback from the market. So then you might make adjustments depending upon the real feedback, no longer assumptions. Now you're actually talking to someone. I'm having a conversation with Nathan. Nathan, what do you think about these fixtures? What do you think about this ceiling fan? Would you pay extra for this? Is this an amenity that you would want to see them pay extra for? Right. And then they say yay, nay, or whatever. Then you might make some adjustments to your value proposition or your value add plan, and you might adjust the rents accordingly. But you're always trying to figure out and adjust the rents, and that's something that's constantly an ongoing process. That's not just done during the underwriting phase like you see and hear a lot. These days, people are just talking about the underwriting phase. No, this is something that goes on daily when you own property. Nowadays they have software that actually changes the rent on certain properties based upon certain algorithms that the property faces, occupancy, vacancy, income, expenditures, and things of that nature. So it'll set a rental price based on supply and demand, basically. Okay. So it's constantly changing. So the ebbs and flows.
Right. But would you say that all properties need some form of curb appeal? So whether it's, A class, D class.
Listen, everybody needs a brand.
Right.
Everybody.
Right.
That's small business, big business, lemonade stand.
Right.
Everyone has to have a brand.
Right. That's
number one. Your properties are no different. Your properties have to have an identity and a brand, and they have to have an experience attached to them. I mean, they don't have to, but if you want to compete and be competitive in a market, they need to. So for me, at the end of the day, absolutely, every property that I take over and operate has an identity, has an experience attached to it. And that experience comes through with the curb appeal that you're talking about, the way the property is toured, the way the property feels, the way the prospect tenant, the interactions between prospect tenant and management, and then when they become a tenant, the interactions between tenant and management, maintenance staff, all of that should be factored into the overall experience, because ultimately what you're selling, especially in a tough marketplace, what you're really selling to the prospect tenant and then hoping to renew the current tenant is you're wanting them to have an experience. Downtown St. Peter, it's an experience. And even if you live and you have a project in a rough neighborhood, you still want to sell an experience. You want your property to feel, like a Class A property, even if it's located in the Class C minus core market.
Right. Well, and once again, so we're talking to everyone, these, who listens to this podcast. We've got seasoned investors. We've got people who are looking to invest for the first time. I want to take you through, this is page 112 in your book, Buy It, Rent It, Profit. You listed some things that people should have to have good curb appeal. And is some of this not really common knowledge? I would imagine. I mean, we've seen some really rough properties. So clearing away the trash from your yard or curb. Have you?
Yeah, it's funny, but it's watch the videos, okay?
Yep.
That I've just recently shot where I was looking at a project, and then I went and visited
BryanChavis.com/YouTube.
And you'll see me walk some properties, and then you'll see me walk the competitors. At the end of the day, you think that that's common sense, but staff, they miss that. They miss picking up the trash, detailing the property, and things of that nature. So a lot of what is one of our coaching students just said this today in the session. Bryan, I love that you mentioned this stuff because this is stuff that I'm overlooking. I know it, but I overlook it. And that's what goes on every day. And that's a business owner talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? What happens when you have staff who has no ownership?
Right.
You don't think if the owner is overlooking this, you don't think staff is overlooking it? So when you say, Bryan, you wrote, that seems like common sense. Common sense is never all too common.
Right.
Especially when you're talking about individuals that work, on a team that may not be attached. If the owner's overlooking that, then staff could be overlooking it. So it's something that needs to be brought up and you need to pay attention to, because that curb appeal is something that is it's really important. It must speak to that demographic.
Absolutely. And so another one we got here is make sure the grass is cut. Once again,
well maintained. It seems like common sense, but again, common sense ain't all that common. You just ultimately you want a detailed property, and you want to pay attention to the devil is always in the detail,
right?
And and then new level, new devil.
Yep.
So as you increase and as you level up your property, then there's always something else you need to then focus on management and focus on the professionalism of the staff and what can you do better. So there's just always a myriad of different things that you're looking at that you can do better, and it all looks like common sense on the surface, but you'll be surprised how many people do not execute on that.
Right. Well, I like talking about this stuff because once again, we get a lot of people talk about acquiring a property. We're looking at cap rates and all this stuff, and it's all airy-fairy until, you've now purchased this property and you
now what?
Handed it. Yeah, you either manage it yourself or you're handing it off. And if you've chosen to get into that D class, which we've seen, there's also this thing where the outside can look like a junkyard when someone moves out. Mm-hmm. They're leaving all kinds of stuff on the side of the property or in the property.
I've seen that on some Class A too, but when I leave the trash, it ain't always on the C
right.
property.
Right.
I've seen all. I've seen all asset classes carry your property up.
Absolutely. So,
I've seen it happen at all levels.
Actually, I did a photo shoot for a property. I'm not can't say names, but high level, lending professional was going to his flat, and I was thinking, okay, I'm about to shoot this luxury flat. I'm really excited, and that place looked like hoarders. I was like, really, man? Like, okay, you pay $4,000 a month to
and you live
hoard
like
all
a
this
hoarder.
stuff.
No, you see it on every asset class. You do.
Absolutely. What about paint jobs? So, with getting...
And that's important. I like that. Paint job.
Yeah.
And so selecting the right kind of paint and understanding, so you're selling an experience. So we're looking at that right now with the downtown projects in downtown St. Pete, and some of them are the wood framed, unfortunately, multifamily. But, the plus side is that this is downtown St. Pete. This is St. Petersburg, Florida. So we can go with that Key West resort style.
Right.
So understanding the type of structures and colors to choose to be able to invite the prospect tenant in and give them that experience that you're trying to sell. It's you have to build a theme and a brand around the property. So choosing the colors and the curb appeal and the type of foliage that you're putting in place, all that should be well thought out to the overall experience and the management plan that you're trying to sell when visiting that property. When you go to Park Plaza, it's that Miami.
Absolutely.
You feel like you're on Collins Avenue. We're selling that Miami vibe.
Yep.
That's the experience of living in downtown St. Petersburg. It's making you feel like you're that tropical vibe, the colors, the foliage that we use, the neon lighting that I decided to keep in place. All of it is just really plays to,
Yeah. No, Park
that
Plaza looks
experience.
awesome. If you guys get a chance, you can go to bryanchavis.com and you'll be able to follow us on our investment journey. Park Plaza is one of our flagship properties, and it's gorgeous. What Bryan's done to it is amazing. And so, yeah, that's a prime example of curb appeal. What about window dressings? And so like curtains, blinds, all that stuff. You got that listed in here as well.
Yeah, because and again, in this video I just shot, I'm looking at the competitive properties,
Right.
And you have landscaping and things of that nature.
Right.
I'm sorry, not landscaping, but the overall uniformity,
Yep.
continuity
Yep.
of the property. It's really messed up when some tenants have their blinds missing blades, or if it's the I forgot the the blinds that I forgot
Like horizontal blinds?
Yeah. So when the blinds are missing blades, or the blinds are all jacked up, or there's some sort of drapery or sheet hanging in the that just really messes up the overall uniformity of the property. Property and the landscape could look good, and then you see the building and it's like missing blinds. It's one person's got a Green Bay Packer a comforter or something, hanging up in the window, whatever it is. Those things are a no-no. It was one of the main reasons why when you go to Park Plaza, I decided to on the frontage of the property.
Right.
I went to the mirror tent, so you can see out, but you cannot see in. You see your reflection.
Okay.
That was one of the main reasons why, so I can have that uniformity, because I noticed when we bought it, if you look at some of the older videos,
Right.
you'll see that some of the tenants, their blinds were messed up, or they would hang something, or, one had a blind open, one was shut. The overall uniformity, it just wasn't pleasing to the eye. So for me, I love to see uniformity on the property. I love to see the consistency in the property as far as the overall professionalism and how it shows. And so that's how that's something that you have to focus on, that you have to make sure that your management team is always constantly focused on, because at the end of the day, Nathan, it comes down to sometimes splitting hairs and individual tenants having to decide where they want to live, both offering similar amenities, both offering similar price points. Now it's going to come down to management and the professionalism and the overall the presentation of the property.
Right.
And I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, this is where I win.
Okay.
Because the properties that I've always been associated with, my training in the multifamily industry, I've had thousands of rental units under management and ownership. I've over 2 decades of experience. I understand I win by having, you can give me a hella property, and you've seen YouTube videos of me turning properties around. First thing I focus on, curb appeal and making sure the management staff is well trained.
Right.
Because I win with a great staff. You can give me a subpar property and I'll still lease it up, because I can win with superior a superior staff, the professionalism, their ability to understand how to show and how to tour properties, their professionalism with current tenants, their ability to get renewals and obtain renewals, their ability to sell that experience of the property, to promote the brand of the property, themselves as individuals as well as the property. All of that, you can give me any type of property. You can give me a bunch of TPs and I'll lease them up with that type of team.
I love it. And I've definitely got a chance to witness it all. And, once again, if you guys want to see this in action, go to bryanchavis.com/YouTube. There's some doozies on there, including having to hire security. So,
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Some of the worst neighborhoods you'll ever.
Right.
Yeah.
What about appealing to the senses? So on page 113, you put appealing to the senses. So things like candles, air fresheners. Like, how do you, as the sensual part of it, when someone walks into an apartment, how are you as
the experience?
Yep.
So again, that's part of selling the experience. When you visit the properties, and a lot of people now too offer self-guided tours.
Okay.
So when an individual enters into a property, they're going to be bombarded by senses. So you hopefully those senses are going to be a good experience.
Correct.
Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the properties are too dark. Sometimes the properties have a dingy smell. That's something that is a negative. when it comes to weighing where they want to go.
Right.
So when they visit, Chavis Academy property, or they visit properties of my clients or my properties myself, Chavis Capital, we're focusing on the smell, we're focusing on the sound,
right,
and we're focusing on sight. We're focusing on the senses and paying. We pay close attention to that, and the interaction. Again, this property, it's selling its experience, and so we want them to have a nice experience. So we focus on lavender, soft vanilla, maybe something that's not going to bother the allergies when you come in. But we try to have some sort of iPad constantly playing our something playing music, with the loop, jazz music or something that's playing on a little small little you can get now the little small little speakers, and then you can have the little MP player still,
right.
And you just play that jazz music or that classical music as they're going through, giving them that experience. Of course, you got the plug-ins, with a nice sense, and then making sure your lighting is adequate. You want to make sure we have staged lighting, making sure that lighting over the stove and the lighting in the bathroom and things of that nature, all that plays to the senses. And you can see all that in the pictures that we have in the videos that I shoot. That's key to be able to play to the prospect tenant senses.
Absolutely. And once again, so we're gonna put a lot of this stuff on bryanchavis.com. If you can go to bryanchavis.com, you're going to be able to see a list of all of our favorite tools that we use. And you can go to bryanchavis.com/leasing toolkit. bryanchavis.com/leasing toolkit. And you're going to get a list of all of our favorite supplies, everything that you need to stage your unit. In your leasing toolkit, you actually listed a fair housing poster.
Correct.
Why should someone have something like that?
It's always good if something should ever arise, that there's proof that you have that poster being displayed where you rent your units.
Right,
and you go to Staples and you get the little stand.
Yep.
And you print that thing out, put it in there. It's just always a good idea to show that you're an equal opportunity, housing provider. If anything ever arises, that you practice by those, race, religion, color, national origin, familial status, person with disabilities. You're focusing on the protected classes, and that you're aware of them, and your team and staff is aware of them, because there's two places that you're going to get sued, and you can get sued by a prospect tenant. As well. And the areas that you're probably going to get sued in property management and ownership is security deposit and fair housing claims.
Okay.
So you want to just make sure that you're well versed in those. That's why it's very important to be trained and have your team trained. So, as an asset manager, if you're going to hand this thing off to third party management, you want to make sure that you've tested them and that they understand that, because ultimately, they may not win, but you'll be named in the lawsuit.
Right.
So if something should arise.
In here as well, I mean, this sounds like trivial, but you put yarn and cutouts, but so like the yarn. So some people think that certain furniture may not fit. That's pretty cool.
We would leave, yarn for them, and it would say that, and we would show leasing agents would have that. If they were touring the property by themselves, they would be able to access it because there was a little sign that said that. But what it does, if there's no furniture in the unit, because there's a lot of our owners who can't afford to stage a unit.
Right.
So they do what they can with some things from, Home Goods, IKEA, wherever they get their, you can do certain things, but you can't really put furniture in because you're trying to lease that particular unit. Correct. So what happens is when people come in and they're trying to figure out spacing, I don't know if my couch would fit there. They use these cardboard cutouts of sofas or things of that nature, and or yarn is just the easiest. That's so they're able to use and put furniture in place so they can get an idea of overall spacing.
Right. I like that. I mean, because once again, people are listening. You might have bought your first property. You don't have money to stage a unit. Like, these are things that can really help you. So,
help any tool you can use to help close.
Yep.
Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're asking for the deposit and a commitment by the prospect tenant. Any kind of tool you can help that particular prospect tenant sign on the line that's dotted. Right. Coffees for closers.
Yep, exactly.
Always be closing. Yeah. So, anything I can do to help, get that close or, get that signature on the dotted line, that's what we're going to do.
I love it. And another part of your book, you put that you have a leasing notebook. And so we'll refer to a leasing notebook. You just got this fancy new iPad. It looks phenomenal.
I was
So
going to mention that for people who are watching.
One day people aren't going to know what we call it notebook. They're like, why do you call it notebook?
Yeah.
It's like, we use books.
Everything you need is absolutely. So all your information, floor plans. And so if you ever have an opportunity to stage, and let's say you can't afford again to put furniture in, but now you stage it one time, you take photos, take the furniture down. Now you have these photos with furniture in the units. And you can go through your iPad and show with the various different floor plans. They're asking about restaurants in the community. You can, boom, you pull that up. So you have all this information in your iPad when you're showing and touring the property.
Right.
This is information that you don't want them asking and having to go find out. Like even with competitors. Oh, I wonder, I'm going to go look at the other competitors. Oh, where are you headed next? Or headed here? Let's pull them up. Mm-hmm. And I'll pull them up and try to walk them through a competitor's property from my iPad and touring their property. So, if I can keep them there versus going to see, why would you want to go there when you can stay here? But let's take a look at our competitor. Let's take a look at some of their units and how they stage. So if you can pull up information in real time, and you can do that now with your iPad, but just knowing, understanding how to have that information loaded in. So you want to have your nearest competitors loaded into your iPad already before when the tour happens, so you can show apples to apples or oranges to apples in some cases. You can have your lease contract already loaded so they can look at it, your rules and regulations, your qualifying criteria, they can sign right there. All of that information, your qualifying criteria, all that needs to be signed, before they enter the unit and see the unit. They need to see the qualifying criteria so they know that your team is not violating any fair housing laws. You're being consistent in the way you show your rental units. So we get them to sign before they go on the tour. They can see a copy of the lease and the rules and the regulations. They can see floor plans of various properties that may not be available at the time. So you're able to show floor plans and pictures. You can also show other areas like, where the trash compactor is or the dumpster is, whatever it is you need to do, schools, you can pull all that up on your iPad. So all that should be in your notebook and ready to go when you're showing your rental units.
I love it. And so one thing you said in the book as well is that the experience that your prospect has with you is your product. So, that's really what it's all about is, providing this good experience because you're the product. So Chavis Capital, our product is, at a high level. You've got three things here for a good open house experience. So luxury service. And as we've kind of talked about it already through the podcast, but how is Chavis Capital providing luxury experience for?
It just comes down, Nathan, to understanding the brand, understanding first the prospect tenant in that particular market, wherever you're at, and then developing the brand around that market, okay? And then creating the framework and the management plan to be able to execute on that brand and it's that brand's goals is the key. And it doesn't necessarily mean a luxury. I mean, when I say luxury, it's a luxury feel. Like if you go to Mercedes or you go to Jaguar or Bentley, the experience to purchase those vehicles, there's wine, there's champagne, there's food, perhaps there's a great presentation on the vehicle. And then if you go to a Honda Civic, and you're shopping, there may be a presentation, but there's definitely no champagne.
Right.
You might get a cola,
some
or a bottle of water, or some donut minis from Dunkin' Donuts, whatever it may be that been there for a couple of hours or maybe even a couple of days.
It's still luxury.
But at the end of the day, that might be luxury to some people. But if you were to experience Bentley, and then you were to experience the donut holes, you would know the difference. True. And the difference is that you can give, and when you're dealing with properties, you can give the Bentley experience at any type of property.
That's true.
I gave clients, and you know this from the videos, I gave our tenants and prospect tenants that Bentley service, even in some of the Class C properties, in some of the rough neighborhoods that I have had to turn around and operate and own and operate myself, and also work with my clients. They got that Bentley type of service. So at the end of the day, you can bring that professionalism, that service to any type of product. And that's what I mean when I talk about, sometimes, man, value add.
Absolutely.
We hear this a lot. Sometimes value add is just simply adding the value to the way you operate the property.
Correct.
You might, because you can change the color of the building, you can add landscaping, but ultimately the experience people have with staff and interacting with the staff and the management team, ultimately that's going to either determine whether or not they rent from you or whether or not they definitely renew with you.
That's true.
The paint and curb appeal only goes so far.
Exactly. And I really loved your work with the C and D class properties. The tenants really felt proud to get into the units. So yeah, that luxury feel for any asset class is key. So you also said that anyone can show a unit, but you do something different. You provide a tour.
Correct.
What's the difference? Like why?
I learned that difference, all the years of experience with Walt Disney World.
Right.
Taking my family to Disney.
Okay.
I understood Disney coined the term, the Disney experience. So I really, my eyes were opened when I visited the resorts, and they know, from the last year's visit or the previous visit, the rides that my kids rode are, they know that my children are smaller, so they'll, in the greeting letter to them, they'll tell them about rides and shows and things like that they can actually get on, like teacup, smaller rides for smaller children and shows that they would be interested in. They know I'm a golfer, so it talks about courses or things that may be going on at certain courses and or upgrades of certain courses, whatever it may be. So the wife, they may chime into the spa experience and the shopping experience and understand where she shopped the last time and offer discounts and things at certain places where she shopped. So just really understanding that you're creating an experience when people show up to the property, it's customizable. Each experience is different for each family based upon their interaction or based upon Disney's assumptions about your family if you weren't to provide them with any information.
Right.
You know what I mean? But there's a questionnaire that they have when you visit the resort or when you're booking online and things of that nature. But it's all of that information and compiled, and their ability to create these experiences is key. Anyone can show up to the hotel, give you the key, maybe show you a few things here and there, but going above and beyond and making an experience is something that keeps people coming back, paying those high ticket dollar amounts. And for me, I'm trying to create an experience because I am trying to outcompete my competitors. I know that dollar means something to that prospect tenant, and they can take that dollar across the street and go somewhere else.
Right.
So it's my job to want them to put that dollar with Park Plaza and to feel like they're getting something back versus just putting money into rent and not getting anything back like ownership or anything of that nature. With us, we want them to make them feel like they're getting something back, and that something back is a noteworthy experience.
Right. I love it. And then the final key that you put was professional management. So all tenants want to be treated with respect. And so if you're unorganized and unprofessional in the beginning, the type of tenants you want may be turned off by your lack of unprofessionalism. Have you seen that in the industry? And how do you
biggest value add proposition for any investor, syndicator, whomever, the biggest value add proposition that you don't hear talked about is in the management. Period. You hear all the books talk about value add, but not too many people really talk about what value add means. You can value add, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, to the offering amenities to the property, offering curb appeal, offering an experience, but ultimately the true value add that should never be overlooked, that needs to be focused upon in the management plan as you're developing the framework for the management plan. The most important aspect is the management and how will you execute Monday through Sunday and what that experience is going to be for that prospect tenant and that tenant. For the tenant, how can we ensure that they renew at their higher price? For the prospect, how do we get them to invest their dollar with us? So ultimately, it's the number one thing you can do and focus on when you're talking about a value add, that you're a value add firm, is understanding that value add starts with the management,
right,
and executing.
Man, So, I mean, you just gave us all the tips to really be a leasing megastar. So
that's it, brother. I gave you the tips to create. And what does a leasing megastar do? We'll close with this. A leasing megastar leases, right?
Yep.
And when you lease, you rent. And when you rent, you're bringing obviously income to the value to the property.
Correct.
So you're creating net operating income. And when you have what makes up 99.9% of net operating income is typically is rent. And rent and net operating income equals value. So ultimately, all this comes down to adding value to your property. Maximizing income, minimizing expenses is adding value to your property. So the execution day-to-day and the management and the asset management is having a direct result on value. So when you're talking about value add, if you're not talking management and what affects day-to-day net operating income, what affects it day-to-day, who's the gatekeeper of net operating income is the management. So if you don't really understand how to overhaul, create frameworks and management plans for each property, creating a unique brand, executing upon that brand, putting in the proper systems in place, that identify the work that needs to be done, then tells the user how to go about performing that work consistently, then you can get to profitability. If you can't do that, then you're just stuck on that acquisition phase in the 5 phases and underwriting. And you've missed the point of really being a successful syndicator or an investor, that there is much more than just understanding how to underwrite investment property or analyze markets. There's acquisition, implementation, stabilization, growth, and exit strategy. Brother, there's 4 other phases that you have to master to be successful, to be able to add that value to the bottom line. And really, that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
And man, I'll say no more.
Hey, no, I'm going to have you say a little more. But thank you so much for coming into the studio, B, man. It is always a pleasure having you.
Always good to be here.
Man, so Multifamily Matrix is our coaching program. It's our weekly coaching program. We've been having some phenomenal coaching sessions. The materials are just getting better and better. The connections that are happening in there is amazing. Tell people about Multifamily Matrix. What's been your experience, even just leading the coaching, and what can people expect moving forward?
I said it this morning. How do I take 2 decades of experience managing thousands of rental units through various different economies, from 9/11 to that crash in the market, and navigating just thousands? When you're talking about thousands of units, thousands of rental units, okay, over 4,000 at one time I was operating and managing. Do you understand how many personalities and how many experiences have I had that I'm dealing with, from the management side to the tenant side? Right. How and where does an individual gather all that experience? And I'm talking to all of our listeners, because a lot of folks now are becoming thought leaders and wanting to be to put content out there. It's tough to be just turn on thought leadership without having knowledge, right, and experience. So for me, the difficult part was, what can we create? What type of platform, what type of ecosystem can we create for an individual to glean all of the experience, the 20 some odd years experience I've had through training and coaching sessions. And, because that's what we have to do, is we have to prepare these individuals. We have to develop their skills, and we have to give them the opportunity to develop and the tools and services to develop. And that is what goes on in the Matrix. And as it grows, the opportunities that are presented to the group, the opportunities from growth development, the opportunities from the real estate side of things, financial opportunities, all those things grow inside the Matrix. And ultimately, as we grow it and we put into it, and I'm putting my experience into it, and you're putting your experience as the wizard behind the platform, making sure that client experience is top notch. As it grows, it just grows stronger and stronger. Skills become more developed, tools and services become more refined and focused to the client's needs, no matter what level they're at.
Correct.
And that is to me, the beauty of it is, no matter what level, beginner, novice, experienced syndicator, CEO, you got owners, you got all kind of people in the Matrix. Right. they're developing, and they're growing. And you heard one of them say today, Bryan, it's funny because, I know all this. Mm-hmm. I'm experienced. This gentleman has over 20 years experience himself. But the reinforcement of it all helps me keep my sword sharp.
Correct.
Because you might be a master samurai and you might have a nice sword play. But if your sword is dull,
right,
what good is it?
Absolutely.
Now you're just sparring.
Man. So, we have over 130 videos in there. There's probably over 30 segments on rental investing, asset management to start out with. So as soon as you log in, whether you're a beginner or experienced, there's over 130 videos to start out with. We add a new video each week through our coaching and training program, and all of your leases and forms and all the documents that you need to be successful are also included. So if you're looking to manage properties, if you're currently managing properties, we'd love to invite you to join the Matrix, bryanchavis.com/matrix. It's the Multifamily Matrix. It's our weekly coaching and training program for investors, people who are looking to get into multifamily property. Once again, go to bryanchavis.com/leasing toolkit. You're going to be able to get all the information that we talked about today, including some of our favorite resources and tools. And then also, we've teamed up with Home Depot. We've got a really cool deal. So this whole podcast, as we've been talking about this, now as listeners to this podcast and people who subscribe to what we're doing, you can go to bryanchavis.com/Home Depot and, tell them more about that. So, with Home Depot Pro,
Yeah, so the Pro Desk in the relationships and the sponsorship with Home Depot, our partnership with Home Depot, is significant to the fact that you're able to, for all of our owners and operators out there, you're able to actually access better pricing even than what you can get at the Pro Desk. Because at the Pro Desk, essentially, you're still buying off the shelf of Home Depot.
Correct.
So we might get some perks here and there, but we're still buying off the shelf. And with this, new website and this is a Home Depot, but it's a Home Depot site that offers discounts to specific to property managers and owners of rental property, and much better pricing. So,
correct.
We're going to tap into it with our properties, and now we're able to offer that to our clients within the Matrix. And I'm just really excited about that Home Depot partnership, and and other partnerships that are to come with our podcast and our sponsorships with our podcast, and us being able to tap into that. We have something with Renometer as well.
Correct.
I'm just excited about all of these opportunities, that our listeners and our clients are able to to have access to.
Absolutely. And to learn more about that, go to bryanchavis.com/Home Depot. We're really excited about all our partnerships. Our goal is to help you own multifamily in 2020 and beyond. We're always looking at the resources that are going to help make your life easier. And once again, thank you so much for all of your knowledge and all your information, man. Thank you for hanging out in the studio, brother.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to talking with you next week.
See you next week.
Take care.
All right, buddy.